Please welcome our session moderator, Caty, Borum, Chattoo, Executive Director of the Center of Media and Social Impact at the American University.
It is very hard to follow that. I am not a comedian, but let's give another round of applause to those incredible artists. I was crying backstage, so I bumped my mic a few times, so we'll see if this works. So good morning. So I'd like to open with a few stories about why comedy matters, and more specifically, why the contemporary voices of women comedians and writers and decision makers are so meaningful. So in my work producing comedy and researching comedy and writing about comedy for social change, I think about comedy as a source of both what I call civic imagination and social critique. So comedy helps us imagine what's funny, what the world looks like when it's better, and it also helps us to say clearly what's wrong. And when it entertains us, comedy is powerful as a form of persuasion. It can bring us together. It can mobilize us, it breaks down social taboos, it helps humanize those who are othered, and it importantly invites in the lived experiences of voices that we don't otherwise hear from as often. But above all, comedy must be hilarious. So in 2016, here's a story that I'd like to tell you. This silly video from the comedy group Funny or Die was used to inspire the civic engagement and participation that helped lead to the passage of unprecedented federal legislation in the United States, where I'm from. In the video, these supervillains discuss the absurdity of our existing sexual assault laws. They plot to defeat the heroic Captain Brave as they decide that issues like withholding medical evidence from survivors is too evil to even consider. This was part of a really serious campaign, though, a really serious effort. So in 2014, after surviving a sexual assault, a young woman, Amanda Wen, learned of the dramatic loopholes in the criminal justice system around sexual assault in the United States, that survivors have no established rights that will allow them to seek help in finding justice. She founded an organization called RISE and got to work crafting federal legislation at 24 years old, by the way, as we all do. So her bill moved forward in 2016 in the United States, but it stalled in an election year, because we had an election in 2016. So enter comedy. So she worked with the group Funny or Die on several short-form comedy videos that captured public media attention and really helped to unlock the legislation. And in October 2016, before he left office, President Obama signed legislation with unanimous support from both parties in Congress, which, by the way, almost never happens. That legislation is called the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights. Amanda herself was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018 for this work that she continues on the state level and around the world. Another story. In 2015, Samantha Bee helped humanize the Syrian refugee crisis with a hilarious, sarcastic video from inside a Syrian refugee camp, where our news had previously only sought to dehumanize what was happening in Syria. Our research at the organization that I run at American University showed that she invited people in to empathize and connect in a way that was completely different than what we were doing with news portrayals. So one of the things that we like to say is that comedy is symbiotic with news, that it's not an either-or proposition, that we need comedy as much as we need serious forms of information to invite us in. And in 2018, another story, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you may have heard of this one, comedian Michelle Wolf brought down the house, but also she made journalists very angry when she chose to criticize both President Trump but also some of the coverage that helped to elect him. She was what I like to call a delightfully unruly woman who did not follow anyone else's rules. She changed the trajectory of the conversation for weeks, and she invited in this kind of public conversation about the role of the First Amendment and freedom of expression. So there are so many other stories, but the through line of this idea and this panel is really about the bold, empowered, unapologetic, hilarious voices of women comedians and writers in these strange times, and how meaningful those voices are. So comedy matters. It really matters in the work that you all do and that we do together, and specifically the voices of women matter. So to begin the discussion, I want you to join me in welcoming our panelists. I'm going to scoot over to the side. So we have Allana Harkin, producer, correspondent, and segment director for Full Frontal with Samantha B. on TBS. Tumi Morake, South African comedian, radio and TV presenter, and author of And Then Mama Said. And finally, Saskia Schuster, comedy controller for ITV and founder of Comedy 50/50. Oh yes, we have the amusing yet poignant music to begin. So thank you for joining us, and thank you all for hosting a comedy session. That doesn't usually happen in convenings like this, so big props to International Women's Forum. So let's talk about the current moment in comedy. So certainly, it's not the idea that women's voices in comedy are new, or the idea that comedy that interrogates things that matters is new. But there is a contemporary moment. The media system has changed. Clearly, the political climate is in a real state of challenge. So what's most exciting to you about what women are doing and saying in comedy across the world at this moment? And how do you feel like the media marketplace changes have sort of allowed a opening up, if they have? And I'll let you all interpret that however you'd like to answer it. Maybe I'll start with Allana.
Well, first of all, I don't know many comedians who can do comedy at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So, well, I do, but they're usually women. So women fully clothed, that was amazing. That was hysterical. My mind is completely still on them because I was watching the whole time backstage going, only women would say yes to this gig. I've never done comedy at 10 o'clock in the morning before.
Yeah.
So what was your question again?
I actually just forgot it, so I'm glad this is still here. You all see I'm very bad on the front. What is most exciting to you? What's most exciting to you about what women are doing and saying in comedy at the moment?
That we have jobs. It's funny because I really only, we work with, there are men who are on our show and they have to be feminists, but I really, for the past, since working on Full Frontal, really it's from a female voice, so that's the focus all the time. So I don't often think about if women have a place, because that place is every single day at my job. But always has been, like when I started comedy, it was with 3 other women. One of them was Samantha B, and we had a sketch troupe called the Atomic Fireballs. That's why when I was watching Women Fully Clothed, I was like, oh, it comes from a, good place. But yeah, we have to claim that space, but I don't think we have to, we don't have to fight for it, I'm hoping, as much anymore, because now we can just tell people, I can't swear. I was like, how am I going to get through this panel without swearing? We can just tell them where to go, ladies and gentlemen. And we don't have to always ask for permission. I think that's really important. We just show up and do our job and show that we're just as funny as everybody else.
Yeah. Tumi, do you want to add some insight?
I think the exciting thing is we have so much access. I think what happened in the beginning is they went, women are safer. And then we're like, yeah, we're safer, of course, let us in, yeah. And then we got in and just stripped off our bras and went crazy. So,
wait, what?
Not safe at all, not safe.
I think, without bashing men, I feel like male comics have said everything that needs to be said and that can be said, and we have such a fresh perspective that magazines are excited about us. Like back home in South Africa, you will find a female comedian on the magazine cover. And now I'm like, thank goodness I don't have to live on salad to be on a magazine cover. Let me be funny and be on a cover of a magazine for my talent. You know what I mean? It's exciting. I love the salad eaters, bless you. But also what's exciting is, for me, as a comedian in South Africa, is there's a lot of gender-based violence that's happening, but it's happening in a really ugly way. Like, violence is ugly enough, but if you look at the crimes that are happening, the way women are being attacked, you feel like if you're going to say we have the most forward-thinking constitution in the world and most open, yet the women who you claim are at the forefront are the greatest victims of any kind of crime in this country, there's a problem. And so what's happened is we are on TV, we're on radio. Most of our biggest radio stations have female anchors holding up breakfast shows, which is a huge thing. And I feel like that's starting to drive conversation. I've left commercial radio. I've gone to PBS. I'm on a radio station, Breakfast, and it's in Setswana, which is my home language. And what you found generally with those kinds of radio stations is humor's been left to the guys, and then the girls come in as sounding boards and news readers. And I've come in the morning, and I'm like punching in the gut. I'm not here to play. I take no prisoners. And what has surprised the station is a lot of the women who call in are from a demographic that don't expect to be as outspoken or as hilarious. Yeah. Like, we play a lot of clips of these women. So I think when it comes to media and the platform for comedy and for social commentary, for South Africa, and I think it's because we love watching the world and going, we're going to catch up, is that women now have a voice, and it's a lot of responsibility. Because, I mean, it's great to go, I'm a woman, I represent all women, but that's a lie. That's a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
Like, already, you know, I'm not with the salad gang. And, and I have a husband and 3 children and a career, and I do shave, but I'm a strong feminist, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Love that. Saskia, what are you?
I think I noticed a real difference in sort of the way women are in comedy this year when I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And first of all, there were so many more women doing stand-up and character comedy and sketch comedy. I was talking to Nika Burns, who sort of started the Comedy Awards 40 years ago. And she said in the first 10 years that the Comedy Festival was running, about 5% of the comedians were female. This year, it was around about 35%.
Wow.
And she said what she thought was really noticeable, she said, I shouldn't be looking at stats in that way. What I should be looking at is who's making the awards lists and the short lists. And it's more and more women. This year, on the newcomers list, it was pretty much all women. Last year, the same. And it's not just that women are doing more comedy, but they're doing it well. And so there's a real visibility, and that sort of inspires other women to do it. But also, it means that audiences are different.
Right.
You know, I used to go to comedy gigs and it would be primarily men in the audience. Now it feels very mixed. I went to a Hannah Gadsby gig a few weeks ago and it was pretty much all women there, which was fantastic. But I think that changes what women feel they can talk about and how they can talk about things. I remember a comedian, I don't know if she's sort of translated, but called Jo Brand, who back in the 90s would be talking about periods and would sort of talk about it as this most shocking thing, and men would be sort of like, oh my God. And then I saw Michelle Wolf a couple of years ago at Edinburgh talking about tampon dealing in the office and how you can pass them around secretly. And you know, half the audience really got it, and the men were still a bit... but I just think there's been a shift in that women now, I think we're allowed to be imperfect. I think we can own our bodies, we can own our mistakes, we can talk about physical things that we couldn't before, or not without sort of framing it within an acceptable way that didn't make men feel uncomfortable or not get it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add 2 points, just reflecting with you all. And first of all, I'm so happy to hear that about the Fringe Festival. It's really exciting. You know, a reflection on Michelle Wolf, although I could really talk about her all day. I think she's brilliantly funny. You know, there was such a backlash against her at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I thought, you know, those of us who are pretty dialed into comedy, and either, you know, you all do comedy all the time, I write about it and research it, but I thought, what was the problem? Was it that she chose to talk about female genitalia, even though the president had been talking about it? Was it that it was a voice of a woman reclaiming that? Or was it that they didn't like the words that she used, even though we elected a person who uses those words himself. But the other point that I find interesting is when you look at the changing media marketplace, and at least in terms of comedians, female comedians who are coming up in the United States, part of what's happened is over the last 10 years, when you look at, we have voices like Francesca Ramsey, who has a great MTV show called Decoded. She breaks down race and ethnicity discrimination. And a number of women who have sort of created their brand and sort of honed it first on YouTube, so that by the time they're kind of quote-unquote discovered by the mainstream or picked up in the entertainment marketplace, they're already being recognized for the voice that they've fully developed on their own. So I feel like the changing media marketplace is a really big component. Certainly not all of it, but. So I wanted to turn to asking you each, and maybe we'll do it in reverse this time and start with Saskia. What topics are you each addressing with great passion these days, and how are you as individuals and as a network, in the case of you, Saskia, so I think it's good to start with you, how are you coming up with topics for comedy in this current moment?
I don't really work like that. I don't like to sort of suggest things to producers or writers. I like authenticity. I like people to come to me. So what I'll do is I'll brief what we're looking for the channel, what would be a good fit in terms of tone, and we have particular demographics we're trying to hit. So it's much more about sort of just the communication being the fact that we're open to receiving those sort of ideas. Mm-hmm. I think it always shows if someone is sort of thinking, what's a topical issue at the moment? Oh, it's mental health, it's teenage mental health. I'm going to write a comedy about that. It feels forced. I don't like that. I think it always shows in the writing. So I'd much rather it's brought to me, but it is just sort of making sure there's an open door for that.
Yeah, so organically funny and,
Yeah, I mean, we had a show, I commission sort of comedy dramas, half-hour scripted comedies, and comedy entertainment, which is like game shows and things like that. We've got a hip-hop comedy game show at the moment, which I absolutely love. And we were in the gallery watching the recording of it, and someone said, "Oh, look, all our panelists are female." We were like, "Oh, that's really cool, isn't it? We've got an all-female show." And then we said, "All our female panelists are black." And we were like, "Oh." And someone said, "I don't think we've ever seen that on British TV before."
Yeah.
And we sort of looked it up, and that was TV history. And it just happened because it was the right booking, it was the right chemistry, and it was, it wasn't a forced thing at all. So I'm just worried about sort of pushing agendas in comedy.
I agree.
I mean, we've got another show that I particularly hold up to producers as sort of saying this is the sort of thing we're looking for, because I feel it's a great fit for us. It's a show called Time Wasters, and it's about 4 black jazz musicians who live in a South London council tower block, really run down and grotty. And they get in the lift, which is sort of rarely working, and accidentally, stay with me, time travel to 1920s, very white, very middle-class London. And, ostensibly it is a friendship comedy, it's fish out of water, it's ensemble. But actually, below the surface, there's so much takeout about race and class and gender and culture. But it's not ever agenda-driven. It's first and foremost, it's a comedy. It's silly, it's joyful, it's glorious. And I think that's when sort of if there is a bit of chewy takeout, that's when it sort of lands better, really, when it's not forced on you.
That's right. Yeah. I completely agree with you. Well, and look, I mean, this is the idea that when women comedians are empowered, that what they're going to do with that comedy, it might be the lived experience. It's not agenda-driven, but it is simply lived experience that perhaps we're not hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that show sounds amazing.
I love it.
Tumi, how about you? Topics you're passionate about, how you're coming up with them?
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is it funny? Because I've got 3 private school fees to pay. Can't waste my opportunities. But what I'm really talking about, quite honestly, is me as a woman. Is the fact that I bring the biggest paycheck at home unashamedly. I'm married to a feminist man, thank you, Lord. And I'm raising 3 children in a space where African women are believed to be such natural mothers. And I'm like, guys, I'm really fertile. I'm not maternal, I'm just very fertile. So So what I talk about quite honestly is moving from poverty, from apartheid to freedom to money, to the fact that I have the money, it didn't come with the class, and it's fine. And I share my inability to fit in with the people who were born into money or who feel like they were naturally made for money. I play on privilege because my children are privileged Black South African children, in my view. They are born into a family that is mixed. My husband is Black, but he's Ghanaian, so I married a foreigner, so it's a mixed family. I own it. Coke and Pepsi. That's mixed. And so my big thing is race. I'm still very race obsessed because one of the things I share in my book is the attack. I was attacked by right-wingers. My life was threatened. I was threatened with gang rape. I was attacked on social media, in real life, everywhere. By a small corner of South African white angry people who took me out of context. And so I've decided that I have to be the clown. I have to be true to Shakespeare's clown. I must be the one who delivers the ugly message. And I have to be the one ready to let the cabbage be thrown at me, but walk away going, I spoke truth, and I will own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But it has to be funny, otherwise I don't get paid.
Has to be funny.
Has to be
Has
funny.
to be funny. If it's not funny, from an evidence-based perspective, if it's not funny, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's not
Pointless.
comedy anymore.
Yeah, pointless. Allana, what do you have to add?
Well, after November 2016, I feel like, that month was a lot of, oh God. Okay, so this is the worst story ever. I think this is a funny take on it. So it came from a lot of being really upset, and then we would, we have these meetings, we go around and we talk about what stories we want to cover. And for the longest times, one person would cry. We have a lot of women who work on our show, and we're completely open to that, by the way. That's not a weakness. Like, I cry all the time. And I had moved to the U.S. from Canada. I was born in Hamilton and lived in Toronto for 16 years. Canadians in the audience. And then, so I moved my family. Okay, I'm gonna do the nutshell version of this. I went to the DNC and I covered a Bernie rally, and then I realized at that Bernie rally, this was August 2016, that Hillary Clinton was not gonna win. Because I realized the division. I'm like, oh no, she's gonna, I'm sure, come on. And so I'm gonna still move my two children in their very comfortable Canadian life to the United States of America. So they moved September 2016. And then Trump was elected November 2016. So that was a fun night. Of many tears, but we had planned a celebration show for. We had balloons, and Sam had we all had sequence outfits and things like that.
Oh, no.
So our
Very sad, Allana.
Yeah. So since November 26th, this is not feel sorry for me, whatever. I have a full-time job in comedy, which is a miracle for a woman in the United States. The stories that we cover, obviously, there's been so much going on in the U.S., and a lot of it, are stories that don't make us laugh, but we feel strongly that we have to cover. And one of the interesting things is that I was on this major learning curve of okay, why is there no health care in this country? If there's no health care, how is there equality? If you don't think your neighbor should live, how are we going to do? So I would ask these questions that everyone had already, they're like, well, that's just the way it is. I'm like, that's insane. This is the richest country in the world. What? Yeah. So, the one, I guess the story that we did recently is that we were talking about heartland voters after one of the debates. And all of the networks go to these diners in Columbus, Ohio.
Always the diners.
Americans are obsessed with
that about?
diners,
I
but
know.
Columbus, Ohio has the second largest Somali community in the United States. So we were like, okay, here's a funny take. But it's also, true. These people aren't going to talk to this community. It's a huge community of voters. So we're like, let's go there. We'll speak to Heartland voters, but we'll only speak to Somali Americans. And so we got like a pickup truck with hay, and they sat in the back of the pickup truck. And they were like, what are you doing? And we had this amazing conversation about, what the needs of that community are and why haven't people come to talk to us? We're voters, and we're, all across the US. So right now there's a lot of funny takes that still make us also weep because of the stories are awful, but at the end of the day, it's a comedy show. Like, we have to be funny, but we also really want to make a point.
Yeah.
And kind of, puncture a hole in a story, which I think, that's why it's really important. Also, in a room, especially in a comedy room, there's got to be 50% women. It has to be.
Has to be.
There has to be. Like, when people say, "Oh, well, you got to just have the funniest people in the room," I'm like, I don't believe in. I believe in 100% in 50-50. I'm like, that's you can't say, well, it's only men that apply to them. I'm like, that's bullshit. It's really easy. If you go into a company where it's all men, they're just lying. It's just lies. You shouldn't work for that company. You should come work for this company we're going to start with just women. It really frustrates me when I talk to people and they're like, yeah, there's only one woman in this room. I'm like, that's just lazy show running. Mm-hmm. It's just lazy. Yeah. Like, I can give you 15 names right now of really funny people who will bring a different perspective and a different story, and it'll make the show 1,000 times better. That's 100% true. Yeah. So yeah, our stories come from both sides, and at the end of the day, it's sort of like, is this a show? Are you going to watch the show? Are you going to laugh? Are you going to learn something? Are you going to get mad? We're mad all the time. I'm 100%, like 30% more mad than I was when I left Canada. Maybe even more. I used to be. It's completely different. You guys, you have it made in the shade a little bit. There's things that we can work on in this country, believe me. There's a lot of things. I have a list. There's a show that has to happen here too, by the way. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be angry about, and a lot of comedy can come from that. I mean, that's how we make it.
Yeah, and can find a new way in often where it's tough to bring people in. Well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and this session actually has time for audience questions, so I'm sure that's exciting for you all. And I want to say that a question is not a manifesto or a proclamation, so if you could just do questions, that would be helpful so we can hear from more people. So you all know what I'm saying, right? We all go to conferences.
But this is your time. You take it.
This is your time. I mean, if it's a tiny
you get a
manifesto,
microphone, you own that.
Yeah, small, but also a question. It can't end with, I don't know if this is a question. If you don't know if it's a question, it's not a question. So that would be good to ask questions. Anyway, so we have 2 mics here and a beautiful halo light.
Oh my God.
I hope that light
See,
doesn't
that's
make
comedy. I'm sorry.
I know, look, that's funny.
No pressure at all with your question.
There's God asking a question.
You've been beamed down.
God is here.
From the moon.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, goddess of light. You all, please ask questions now that I've scared you. You're afraid.
Mic doesn't seem to work.
That's hilarious. It's only the light that works. Now you have to yell.
Also tell a joke.
Nothing?
We are not in
Is there a
charge.
button on it?
Oh no. You have to use the mic.
She did try. She said she's
Can't
going to
project.
project.
Oh, you got to use the mic.
For the sake of brevity, how you all dealing with?
Yes.
Hello.
I could totally hear
Hi.
her.
She just needed a cordless. That's what.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
What.
I don't even know if this is a question, No, I'm just kidding.
We
Nice.
have established this.
Nice.
I feel like political correctness has really swung in a very unforgiving way. How are you all dealing with that in comedy? It seems like maybe it's stifling a little bit with some creativity. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you deal with that? Do you feel that it's stifling what you're doing or not at all?
Can I blame Twitter? Like, the world is over-consuming outrage porn. There's major outrage porn happening. Everybody is hurt. Everybody's offended. And I call them offense thieves. I'm tough. I take offense. I didn't offer it, damn it. It's annoying. It really is. I think PC is fantastic. It forces us to be more creative. But the problem is these social activists, man, who hide behind eggs and birds, and I can't. I feel like we should challenge PC if it's a way of silencing. I get really pissed off because as women, we've had a voice, but now we rarely have a voice to say stuff with the gloves off, and this is the time when suddenly we are being censored and being asked to watch how we put it. Screw that. I didn't get to burn my bra in the 60s. I'm burning it now with my language, and I will pick when I'm PC and when I'm not PC. But yes, it is a headache. It's a headache.
So I don't know if you all have anything to add or if we want to go to the next question.
Sorry.
Well,
didn't
it's
mean to
usually,
so long.
in my opinion, it's often a really bad male comic who's
I was
saying
just going to say that.
political correctness. That's why I can't do my set anymore. And I'm
Yeah.
like, bye.
That's true. That is who is saying that.
It is.
the
You know,
men.
Louis C.K. cries political correctness. I think
Right.
we call it something else. I think it's called sexual assault.
Yeah.
I told you, I'm 30% more mad.
Only 30. Yes.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I'm Priscilla Douglas from Massachusetts Women's Forum, and how has the marvelous Mrs. Maisel shifted the conversation around comedy?
Well, I should dress up more. I don't look as good. I should wear more hats.
And gloves?
Well, I love that show. I mean, I love Amy Sherman Palladino is an amazing creator, and she's an amazing person who created that show and Gilmore Girls. And I don't know if it shifted the conversation necessarily. Maybe you would speak to that, but it's fun.
I think for us, it hasn't shifted it necessarily, but it's a really good reference point because there's, certainly in Britain at the moment, I think a lot of really miserable comedy, and sort of very dour and thought-provoking and sort of witty and just sort of sarcastic. And Maisel is something that's joyful, and we would describe it as comedy drama, and certainly at the moment, something that I'm doing that's a little bit different to previously is commissioning a lot more comedy drama, which is sort of light drama that has certainly humour to it or a sense of joy, not necessarily joke-driven. But so it certainly has sort of shown the success of that and the popularity of it has been a really useful reference point in when I'm trying to persuade my bosses that really we should be doing something a bit more cheerful.
Yeah, her outfits are amazing.
Yeah, she looks so good. And she has 2 children.
She's very cute. That's not what it's about, though. Sorry. I just realized where I was. It is not about the outfits. Yes.
I'm Pauline Couture from IWF Toronto, and I think we have the distinction, I believe, of being the world's greatest exporter of comedic talent, and including Samantha Bee, who's from Toronto.
Yeah.
But you know, the list is very long. Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short, and you know, on and on and on. So, is there something about Toronto that? I mean, I'm just wondering.
Maybe. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, and there's a lot of
that's now
comics
part
come
of the
out
GTA.
of Hamilton. And I think my feeling, well, for me personally, Hamilton is, you know, growing up, everybody was first generation Canadian, all my friends. Your parents were either Irish or Italian. And there was a little, especially
all of the above.
my mom, you know, I have 61 first cousins. Like, there's no, you got to fight your way to be heard. You know, I think in Canada, you have to hustle to even work, to make a living as an actor or a comedian or anything in the arts. You have to hustle. And the thing that comedy allows for is you can make your own show. You can get together other comedians, other women, and you can write together, and you can get on stages. And that's what we did. We wrote, we got on stages, and a lot of people told us we couldn't because we were 4 women. That happened. I make more money than all of those men now, but you know, it's, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's something that's in the water, but I think there's a little bit of a hustle that has to come from working in Canada as an artist. You just have to diversify, you have to do everything to make a dime, and then, and you have to make jokes about it to survive. I don't know, if I didn't make jokes, I don't know how I could get through. It's an alternative to therapy.
And did you take the trick about crushing the head with you?
Oh, of course. I'm crushing your head right now. I'm crushing it.
Our conference has been made.
Keep on
You know
track.
what?
Love the show.
Thank you.
So, we are supposed to, I'm seeing a sign that says wrap-up session, but I did,
Well, as soon as the light went
someone
out.
was under the light, and I feel like if you stood under the light, you should be able to sneak in your question. I've just broken the rules.
I have a quick question.
Very quick.
We've been talking about women's voices, and we know that women's voices are being cut down. Look at Meghan Markle, politicians, etc. How can we use comedy as a way of countering some of these attacks?
We just need more of them. I mean, that's the beginning, right?
Yeah, I
Do you
mean,
want- Maybe we'll just do last word from the 3 of you, actually.
yeah,
on that
it's
point?
just
On that
exactly what you just said. We just need more women having, like, leading shows, leading, and that's happening. That is happening.
Yeah.
Not enough in late night, obviously, but, you know, and not holding back and commenting and making sure that we are telling women's stories as well. I think it's not happening fast enough, but it's happening.
We need more women supporting women comedy.
Yes.
It's that big. It's in our hands, really. We need to force our husbands to be watching what we're watching and listening to what we're listening to. Because I think for generations, we've been listening to what they wanted us to listen to.
I agree. I think it's about visibility for women. And I think it's also, to your point, I think it's also women supporting women.
Yes.
And you know, social platforms like Twitter, women bringing down other women is not helpful. Whether you don't like their comedy, and comedy's so subjective, it doesn't matter. The fact that they are out there, putting themselves out there, and it's a risky, difficult job to do. I think there should be just genuine support and respect. And I think if women are bringing down other women, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. It's competitive.
I think it's really important, too, to be unapologetic.
Yeah.
Completely unapologetic. And I think that's for every industry, and to be unapologetic about taking up space.
Yes.
And just doing it. And not thinking, oh, you know, is it okay if I just do it? And then if someone calls you a name, well, that's on them, not on you.
Right. Well, I think that's an excellent last word. So thank you all so much for paying attention to this. And thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.
We're done.